The night her father died, Mira felt the world collapse in silence. The hospital halls had been cold, antiseptic, and endless, but nothing compared to the emptiness that filled her chest now. She had always known her father as her guide, her protector, the one who saw her before anyone else. Losing him was like losing a piece of herself she could never reclaim. Tears had run dry at the funeral, leaving a hollow ache. She had expected at least comfort from Caleb, her husband. Someone she thought would stand beside her when life turned harsh. She was wrong. When she returned home, the house was eerily quiet. The familiar hum of life she had once counted on was gone. Caleb was standing at the door, his posture stiff, his face carefully neutral. Mira had imagined grief would bring him closer to her, but his eyes held no warmth, only a cold calculation. He told her to pack her things, his voice calm, almost polite. No apology, no attempt to console. Just words that cut sharper than any slap. "You should take your things," he said. "Just what you need." Mira's heart stopped for a moment, then sank. She followed him to the yard. Rain drizzled lightly, leaving the air heavy and damp. Under the faint glow of the porch light sat a single cardboard box. Her belongings, her life condensed into one cardboard prison. Her wedding photo, once upright on the mantel, now lay face down on top as if signaling the death of her marriage alongside her father. Every item in the box felt like a memory being discarded, a story being erased. Caleb did not explain. Hay never looked her in the eye. Kay, his hands rested at his sides, his jaw tight, his mind already elsewhere. In his own mind, this was necessary. The family business needed attention, debts had to be settled, and Myra, in his view, was a complication. He thought she would be crushed, humiliated, broken. He believed the world was cruel, and he was only being practical, surviving in the way he knew best. But he underestimated her. Myra knelt beside the box, gently closing it. She could feel the weight of betrayal settle over her like a cold stone. Anger bubbled beneath her skin, but it did not consume her, was controlled, focused, a spark ready to ignite. She realized something crucial. She had been waiting for a moment like this. A moment when the injustice of Caleb's actions would become clear, when his arrogance would make him careless. She would not react blindly. She would watch, she would plan, and she would act. The gate clicked shut behind Caleb, and he walked away, confident that he had won. He did not notice the small smile forming on Mira's lips, the quiet determination in her posture. In that moment, she made a silent promise to herself. She would not allow grief and betrayal to define her. She would not crumble under the weight of someone else's cruelty. The yard, the rain, the box sit was all a beginning. That night, Mira did not go inside. She stayed in her car, parked a short distance from the house, listening to the rain patter on the roof. The city lights reflected in puddles along the street, blurred and distorted, mirroring the chaos inside her mind. She went through her memories of Caleb, of their life together, of moments when she had been patient, forgiving, supportive. Every memory now carried a sting, but also a lesson. She realized how carefully she had been underestimated, how subtly her contributions had been ignored, how her intelligence had been dismissed. She unpacked the box in her mind, not her hands. Each item, each memory, became a symbol of what she had endured. Her father's death had left her raw, but it had also left her strong. She understood pain in a way she had never before, and that pain was no longer a weakness. It was a weapon if she chose to wield it carefully. She could feel a plan forming, not of destruction, but of reclamation. She would take what was rightfully hers, not through chaos, but through strategy and precision. The first days were the hardest. Mira stayed away from the house, avoided contact with Caleb, and lived quietly in temporary lodgings. She did not post online, did not seek sympathy, did not speak to friends. Silence became her shield. While Caleb thought her defeated, she was observing, learning, and noting his patterns. His arrogance made him predictable. His belief that he had removed her from his life entirely blinded him to the truth. She had always been the one keeping track, the one who understood the finances, the business deals, the legal details. She remembered her father's words spoken from his hospital bed. Strength is quiet. Power is knowing when to act. Revenge is sweet only when it is clean. Those words echoed now with sharp clarity. She would not act from emotion alone. She would act strategically. Every move would be measured. Every step would be deliberate. And Caleb, in his hubris, would never see it coming. Myra spent hours each day reviewing everything she had once managed for the family, keeping her mind sharp, her focus unwavering. She thought about the years she had sacrificed, the patience she had shown, the subtle manipulations she had endured silently. Now the scales had tipped. She had the power of knowledge. She had the time to act. The betrayal was no longer just a wound, it was an opportunity in the quiet moments. Mira allowed herself to feel the full weight of loss. Her father was gone. Her home, once safe, had been turned into a place of humiliation. Her marriage, once a source of comfort, had been shattered. But grief did not make her weak. It sharpened her senses. It honed her determination. Looked out at the rain-soaked streets, she promised herself she would reclaim her dignity, her future, and her life. By the end of the first week, Mira's plan began to take shape. She would not retaliate recklessly. She would not let anger cloud her judgment. Instead, she would observe, learn, and then act with precision. Caleb thought he had removed her from the equation entirely, but she was already 3 steps ahead. The yard, the rain, the cardboard box, they were symbols of betrayal. But also the spark of a new beginning. And in the darkness of that first night, sitting in her car, Mira smiled again, not a smile of cruelty, but of quiet determination. She was no longer the woman who had arrived home expecting comfort. She was someone entirely new, someone ready to face betrayal with intelligence, patience, and resolve. Caleb had thrown her into the yard thinking he had won. What he did not know was that the game had just begun, and Mira intended to finish it on her own terms. Mira spent the first week after the betrayal in quiet observation. The shock of being tossed into the yard faded, replaced by a sharp focus. She moved into a small apartment, bare but clean, a place that offered her space to think and plan. Her nights were restless, not with fear, but with strategy. Each day she reviewed Caleb's habits, his business dealings, his weaknesses. She knew him too well, and she would use that knowledge with precision. At the office, Caleb walked with arrogance, believing his marriage was over and that he had eliminated her influence. He smiled at colleagues, made deals, and boasted of his freedom. But he was unaware that Mira was quietly gathering information, backing up files she had once managed and noting every mistake he had made. Her presence in his life had always been invisible, like a shadow, and he had never thought to notice it. Now that invisibility became her strength. Myra struggled with her emotions constantly. Anger flared up like wildfire when she thought about the yard, the box, the humiliation. She felt pain when she remembered her father's empty chair, the silence of the house, and Caleb's cold eyes. Yet every night she reminded herself that acting in anger would ruin everything. She could take revenge blindly, but that would satisfy only a small part of her. What she wanted was just as a clean, precise way to reclaim control without lowering herself. She spent hours reviewing old emails, contracts, and financial statements. The company's accounts were messy, debts scattered across multiple accounts, promises unfulfilled. Caleb had relied on her to organize, explain, and fix everything, and he had never thanked her. Now, that knowledge was power. Myra realized that her revenge didn't need violence or confrontation. It could be subtle but devastating. She could expose mistakes, protect her own rights, and let the world see the truth. At the same time, guilt tried to creep in. Was it right to plan someone's downfall, even if they had hurt her. Her father's words came back, clear and stern. Strength is quiet. Power is knowing when to act. She wrestled with herself. Should she expose Caleb completely, or should she act just enough to protect herself and leave him accountable without cruelty? The moral struggle gnawed at her, but it sharpened her resolve. She realized revenge was not about hatred. It was about balance. Every interaction with Caleb became a game. She watched him from afar, noticed his routines, the way he relied on others to manage details he had ignored. He underestimated her, as always, assuming she would retreat into grief. He never noticed that her grief was like a shield, hiding focus, patience, and intelligence. Mira felt a thrill at the thought that he was oblivious to her every move, thinking he had destroyed her while she was preparing to reclaim her life. Her plan took shape gradually. She would not confront him directly, at least not yet. She needed allies, witnesses, and documentation. Myra reached out to a few former colleagues discreetly, those who had respected her work and were aware of Caleb's reckless management. She did not ask for revenge, only for confirmation of facts, proof that could not be denied. Each step was calculated. She wanted exposure to be inevitable, leaving no room for excuses. At night, Mira allowed herself quiet reflection. She thought about the life she had shared with Caleb, the trust she had given, and the betrayal she had suffered. Pain was still there, but it no longer consumed her. It fueled her. She imagined a future where she would not be defined by this betrayal, where she would stand strong, independent, and dignified. Every plan she made was a step toward that freedom, a step away from weakness and helplessness. Sometimes doubt whispered. Was she becoming the kind of person she despised? Revenge had a seductive pull, and it was easy to get lost in fantasies of humiliation or poetic justice. Mira shook her head, reminding herself that her goal was clarity, not cruelty. She wanted to reclaim her life, not destroy someone else's out of spite. Every night, she revisited her father's lessons, reminding herself that action without thought was meaningless. Mira also began to rebuild herself emotionally. She exercised, ran early in the mornings, and focused on small routines that gave her strength. She met old friends quietly, building a support system outside of Caleb's shadow. With every step, she felt more in control. The betrayal no longer felt like an insurmountable wall. It was a challenge she could overcome. Her mind became sharp, her focus unwavering. Meanwhile, Caleb continued his routine, blissfully unaware. He believed that time would erase the sting of betrayal, that Mira would disappear quietly. He underestimated her patience. Mira used this to her advantage, studying his business decisions, noting flaws, and identifying moments when he was vulnerable. She realized that revenge was not about confrontation. It was about timing. Strike too soon, and it might fail. Wait too long, and the opportunity could vanish. The tension in Myra grew steadily. She felt the weight of every choice, every step. Planning revenge was not a simple act. It required restraint, calculation, and patience. Her nights were spent writing, reviewing, and strategizing. Each document she read, each financial report she analyzed, added to her confidence. She knew exactly what to do and when to act. The internal struggle persisted. Should she let this be a lesson in justice, or should she allow emotion to dictate her actions? By the end of the second week, Mira had a clear path. She would act in a way that exposed the truth, protected herself, and left Caleb with no room to justify his actions. Her plan was legal, precise, and unassailable. She did not need dramatic confrontation, screaming, or violence. She would use facts, proof, and calm execution. The power was hers because she had waited, observed, and prepared. Mira's heart was steady now, her mind sharper than ever. The betrayal had sparked a fire, but she controlled it, shaping it into something purposeful. She understood Caleb, his arrogance, his weaknesses, his blind spots. And she understood herself, her strength, patience, intelligence, and capacity. For measured action on the final night before she would act, Mira sat at her desk reviewing her notes one last time. The rain tapped softly against the window, reminiscent of the night she had been thrown into the yard. She smiled quietly, knowing that she was no longer a victim. She was ready. The game had changed. She had transformed her grief and humiliation into a strategy, and when the time came, she would act not out of anger, but out of purpose. Mira's plan was ready, her mind clear, her heart resolute. Caleb believed he had one, but in his blindness, he had set the stage for his own exposure. The betrayal had been the spark, but patience and strategy were the flames. She would act with precision, ensuring the truth was revealed, her dignity restored, and her future secure. And as she finally lay down to sleep that night, she felt a quiet power within her, a calm certainty that justice would be served not with cruelty, but with clarity. The stage was set, the pieces in place. All that remained was the execution, the moment where patience would meet opportunity. Kimra had survived grief, humiliation, and betrayal. Now she was ready to reclaim her life, and Caleb would not see it coming. The morning sun cut through the blinds of Mira's apartment like a spotlight. Today was the day. She had spent weeks preparing, reviewing every detail, ensuring that nothing could go wrong. The documents she had collected, the evidence of Caleb's mismanagement and reckless decisions, were organized and ready. Her heart was steady, her mind sharp. The betrayal, the humiliation, the yard. The box, all of it had led to this moment. Caleb arrived at the company headquarters with his usual confidence. He wore a crisp suit, a smile of self-assurance, the kind of smile that had once made Myra trust him. Today, it irritated her. Every step he took through the office echoed arrogance. He greeted colleagues, discussed deals, and joked about the workload. He believed he was untouchable. He did not know she had already set the pieces in motion, that she had the power to disrupt everything he thought was safe. Myra entered the boardroom, quietly carrying a slim folder. The room was filled with investors and executives, all expecting a routine meeting. Caleb stood at the front, ready to charm, ready to manipulate. He noticed her only when she spoke. "I would like to review a few important details regarding the company's records," she said calmly. Her voice did not tremble. It held authority, the kind that silenced whispers. Caleb froze for a fraction of a second. He had expected her to fade away, disappear quietly into the shadow of betrayal. He had not accounted for intelligence, patience, or quiet strength. The room turned to her, curious, expecting a confrontation. Mira did not shout. She did not accuse. She simply opened the folder and laid out fax contracts signed without proper authorization. Mismanaged accounts, loans taken under false pretenses. Every statement was backed by documents, verifiable and undeniable. As she spoke, the room shifted. Investors leaned forward, colleagues exchanged glances. Caleb tried to interject, his voice rising slightly, but Mira remained calm. Each point she made was precise. She did not add emotion, did not hint at revenge. She let the truth speak. The weight of her preparation became evident. What he had believed to be invisible, unnoticed, was now in full view. Caleb's mind raced. Panic flickered, then anger, then denial. He wanted to regain control, to argue, to twist the narrative. But every document Myra presented cut through excuses. Every fact she revealed left him with fewer options. He realized, too late, that she had waited, observed, and acted with surgical precision. The arrogance that had once protected him now exposed him completely. Mira watched him carefully, studying his reaction. She could see the shock, the disbelief, and a flicker of fear. Not because she sought to humiliate him, but because the truth was undeniable. He had believed he could control everything, but her patience had turned into power. The room had become a stage where justice, quiet and unstoppable, was unfolding. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Power is knowing when to act. Mira had chosen her moment carefully. She had wrestled with the morality of revenge, questioned whether exposing Caleb fully was right. But she knew the path she had taken was clean. She had not lied, not cheated, not attacked personally. She had allowed facts and evidence to speak for themselves. And in doing so, she reclaimed her dignity. Caleb attempted one last defense. A weak argument about intent and circumstance. Mira listened without interruption. She allowed him to finish, then simply closed the folder. "That is all," she said. Softly, her words carried finality. There was no room for denial, no space for distortion. The room understood. The investors knew. The colleagues understood. Caleb had been exposed, accountable, and powerless to change the outcome. Mira turned and walked out of the boardroom. Each step felt heavy with purpose and light with release. She had confronted betrayal without losing herself. She had acted with clarity, not fury. The humiliation, the anger, and the grief had been transformed into precision and strength. As she left, she did not look back. The chapter was over. Outside the building, the air was crisp, carrying the hum of the city. Mira felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She realized something important. Revenge had never been about hurting Caleb. It had been about reclaiming her life, proving to herself that she could rise above betrayal. She had regained control, and that control was far more satisfying than any act of personal vengeance could have been. In the days that followed, the company stabilized. Caleb faced consequences for his reckless decisions, measured and appropriate. He had no one to blame but himself, began to understand that survival built on betrayal is fragile. He reflected privately, realizing that arrogance and cruelty had led to his downfall. Meanwhile, Mira rebuilt her life quietly, focusing on what mattered: independence, dignity, and peace. She allowed herself moments of reflection. The betrayal, the yard, the box, they were painful memories, but they were also lessons. They taught her patience, observation, and the power of planning. Mira understood that revenge can take many forms. It does not always require anger or destruction. Sometimes it is simply about standing firm, revealing truth, and moving forward. Her nights became calm again. She slept without fear, without resentment, eating at her mind. The storm of grief that had once threatened to drown her had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. Mira knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she also knew she had the strength to face them. Betrayal had tested her, but it had not broken her. Instead, it had shown her the power she carried within. The moral of her story was clear to her now. Revenge, when driven by hatred, can destroy more than it restores. But revenge as justice, as reclaiming control over one's life, can be empowering. Mira chose the latter. She did not seek Caleb's ruin for personal satisfaction. She sought to protect herself, to expose truth, and to rise above. And in doing so, she found a peace that anger could never provide. Sometimes she thought about Caleb, wondering if he truly understood the consequences of his actions. She did not wish him harm. She only hoped he learned that arrogance and betrayal come at a price. Her father's lessons had been her guide. Choose strength, act with purpose, and never allow grief or betrayal to define who you are. Mira walked through the city streets one evening, the lights reflecting in puddles from a recent rain, and she smiled quietly to herself. Not because she had one, but because she had chosen the path that preserved her dignity, her mind, and her heart. She had turned betrayal into empowerment. She had turned humiliation into clarity. And most importantly, she had turned revenge into a lesson in strength, patience, and justice. By the end, Mira understood that the power to act wisely, to plan and to reclaim one's life is the truest form of revenge. It does not destroy others unnecessarily. It does not feed hatred. It restores balance, restores self-respect, and restores peace. She had survived the storm of betrayal, and now she moved forward with her life, whole, confident, and free. The rain began to fall again, soft and steady, just like the night she had been cast into the yard. This time, she welcomed it. She felt alive, aware, and unstoppable. The betrayal had ended, but her strength had only begun.